Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. We need to reconvene back into open session, so I need to have a motion first that we come out of closed session. May I have a motion we come out of closed session?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now may I have a motion that we reconvene in open session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, board members, we'll move right on into the action agenda. Dr. Colleen Sane will be coming to the podium. She's going to be talking to us about one of the two action items tonight. The first one is the redistricting recommendation for Cox Mill Elementary School. Dr. Sane, when you're ready.
Yes, sir. It is our recommendation that we continue with the original recommendation on Cox Mill Elementary School beginning the 2013-14 school year to redraw the boundary line to send students who are between DeRuyter Road and 85, south of DeRuyter Road to 85, to Carl A. Farrell Elementary. Students who are rising fifth graders and whose parents provide transportation may remain at Cox Mill for the 2013-14 school year. These students would remain assigned to Harris Road Middle School and Cox Mill High School. Any questions?
Board members, I'd like to start on Mr. Furr's side. If you have questions, concerns about this redistricting proposal, now's your opportunity to do that. Mr. Furr?
No, sir. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Furtenbaugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this particular area, the poplar tent, basically to Concord Mills Boulevard, east of DeRuyter, when we heard from the parents, there are two very different sections of homes, residences in there. The north of Rocky River, east of DeRuyter, south of Poplar Tent, kind of a small rectangle, is basically commercial. It's right above the Concord Airport, and it is older homes. There are about 19 students in that area. There is no further development because the land is going commercial or has already gone commercial. And in fact, the commercial building continues to move south from Poplar Tent Road. So my recommendation is that we exclude that particular 19 student area south of Poplar Tent, east of DeRuyter, north of the Rocky River from this redistricting. Otherwise, hold it true.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh, for your comments and for your suggestions there. Ms. Blackwelder, you want to make your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I would like to hear a response from either Dr. Sane or the staff regarding Ms. Furtenbaugh's recommendation and remarks from the rest of the board members, since I was not available for the public hearing.
We drew that line on DeRuyter Road. We typically use roadways as boundaries, although that is an older home subdivision, and it is not likely to grow. It is likely to age out.
Ms. Blackwelder, you have your questions answered, Ms. Blackwelder?
I would like to hear what the rest of the board members would like to do.
Okay, all right, we'll move along
Thank
into Mr. Kiker, you have any?
No, I don't have any further questions about the plan in general, but of Mrs. Furtenbaugh's suggestion, what's the southernmost part of what you're talking about exempting, or not exempting, that's not the right word, of redrawing?
I'm saying the southernmost is the actual Rocky River, and we often do use natural boundaries. It's the Rocky River.
So between the red lines, everything north of the river?
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's everything north of the river.
Between those two red
Twin
lines?
Creek subdivision, which is just off the airport.
I think it's twin. I think there's two subdivisions there. Twin Creek. Oh, excuse me. I think there's two. In there, two Twin Creeks and Misty Woods. I think there's two subdivisions there, if I'm not
I'm
mistaken.
gonna send it back down.
And there's like
I'll pass it down.
19. It's two small ones there. I think
Very
that's
small.
And is there any homes there on the right hand side at all?
No.
I don't think there is. And I agree with Ms. Furtenbaugh. I would be in agreement. I can agree with the other ones. And the only other question, which I was assured by staff,
Right.
and one of the things that I have stood very firmly on,
This would be a permanent
a
redistricting.
permanent redistricting.
Yes, ma'am.
Because one thing that I have said over and over, I am not in favor of moving these children once or twice And people that know me know that
Right,
when I say something, that's what I mean.
right.
And because if somebody comes up to me a year from now, or a year and a half from now, and they're
Right.
saying, I'm going to move these children,
You're going to
I got
say.
crutch back here,
Okay.
and I'm going to come after somebody.
Got it.
Because they've assured me that this is not the case, because this is something that's really, really
For-
I don't want to
yeah.
do that.
For-
That they will not, these children in this area are not going to be affected by
Right.
the new school that we are planning to build.
Fur is not an area of growth. There are no subdivisions that are active subdivisions, no apartment buildings that are active apartment buildings in the Fur District. And so it is with that confidence that I say that they will not be redistricted. However, let me just say this. If somebody comes in and decides to make a huge land buy in that particular area, and we decide down the road that that's a good idea, you're going to have to tell me to do it, and then I'll bring it to you.
But I've been assured of this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. We'll go back to Mr. Kiger so he
Well,
can finish up his comment.
Yes, and I've just confirmed on the map of exactly the area
Right.
Ms. Furtenball was talking about, and I'm okay with that exclusion. I do want to make, I don't want to be the splash of cold water to Ms. Carpenter. There are no guarantees. I mean, you can't guarantee something sitting here. I'm with you 100% that I don't want anybody to move twice. It's hard enough and bad enough once. But our crystal ball is no better than anybody else's, and we can pledge, and I'll take the pledge with you, that we'll do everything possible to keep somebody from moving twice. But I feel the need to say we know that there are no guarantees. But as far as the proposal that Ms. Furtenball has offered, I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Carpenter, do you have any further comments, questions?
Well, the only thing, and I wish we had as many as were here the last time, because the only thing that I really, really want to state, and I would like to state to the viewing audience, is going to be very crucial, very, very important with what we're doing here tonight on this motion and the next motion, and that will be basically that we have to work very, very closely with our county commissioners. We can't do any of this unless we have money to purchase a land and for us to be building these schools. Because these children, when they get out of this, we've got to build the elementary, and they're not going to disappear when they leave that elementary. They're going to have to be going to a middle school. And we've already got our middle schools almost to capacity as they are right to this day. And they got to go somewhere. They're not going to disappear. They're going to have to be going to a middle school. So we've got to work close, and these things need to be on the ground. And so I want all these parents that are listening and these children that are being affected, for them to be on the doorstep of the county commissioners, and for them saying, you're going to have to get money for these schools, and for us, the land, for the schools board to do what they need to do for these children.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Very well said. Ms. Minot, you have comments, questions, concerns?
I would go along with Ms. Furtenball's recommendation about those two subdivisions. They are older subdivisions. I don't think they're going to be growing. And those folks have already in the past suffered tremendously from the airport. I don't think we need to be shuffling children around, so I go along with her.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minot. Since I hadn't said anything about it, and truthfully, I could go either way on it, but I really like the way you had the plan drawn out originally, Dr. Sane, simply because it's real specific. It
Thank you,
keeps a
sir.
real nice, neat border down both sides. You're very clear on that. And not only that, my other concern is we're going to be removing less than 20 students from our original proposal, which was 139 kids coming out of Cox Mill to go to Fur, and now we're going to reduce that down to around 120. When I felt like the 139 was not enough to start with, that's two of my main contentions there. But if the majority of the board feels like that's what they want to do, then that's what we'll do. So, board members, with that being said, are there any other further comments, questions, concerns at this time? Because we're going to vote on this and we're going to put it to bed on Cox Mill. Everybody okay? All right, with that being said, the motion is going to be given to us by Ms. Furtenball. So at this time, Ms. Furtenball, if you would like to give us that motion, and then we'll get a second and move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that the recommendation for alleviating overcrowded conditions at Cox Mill Elementary School Phase 1 be approved as presented with the exclusion of the students south of Poplar Tent, east of Derrida, and north of the Rocky River natural boundary. And with grandfathering of rising fifth grade students in the inclusion area if they provide their own transportation.
Okay, board members, you've heard the motion. Do I have a second to that motion?
She left out that the parents do their own if they wanted to.
I think you did state that, didn't you, Ms. Furtenbaugh?
With their own transportation? Yes, ma'am, I did.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Yes, you did. It's clear on that. All right, we have the motion. Do I have a second? All right, Ms. Monitt made the second. All right, those in favor of this motion say aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. So it's be 6-1. I'm opposed to it because I stated my two reasons, and I felt like we needed to keep the continuous boundaries going. So anyway, there it is, Ms. Monroe. It's 6-1 with Lynn Shue dissenting. Okay? All right, now we'll move on to our next 5.2 on the action agenda, and that there is the WRO Dale redistricting proposal. And Dr. Sain, you're already there, so let's get started on that.
I am. It is our recommendation that we move students who reside within the farms at River Point subdivision as a satellite district to Boger Elementary School until we can get a new school built in that area.
Okay, Dr. Sain, thank you for your recommendation there. We'll start on Ms. Monitt's side. Ms. Monitt and the rest of the board, this will be our opportunity once again to address the WRO Dale redistricting proposal. And we'll go down through the line, starting with you, and we'll be voting on this just in a few minutes. So, Ms. Monitt, when you're ready, go ahead.
I'd just like to preface what I have to say with the fact that I first served on the Board of Education in 1992, and so for the past 20 years, with some service as a commissioner and some time off, I have been involved in 15 of these redistricting issues, and it's very consistent every time that you have a redistricting issue. You hear the same issues of the children not wanting to move, of the families wanting to keep them where they are, and it's a very difficult situation. It's never an easy job or a happy job, and I would like to second what Carolyn said about the commission, being dependent on the commission for funding. Folks need to really talk to the commissioners and urge them to be sure in the future to fund these schools. One of the things that came up in the conversation was that some families had lived in the Odell area for many, many years. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we can't live outside of one of the fastest growing cities in the country and expect that we're not going to constantly see change. I mean, that's like saying that New York City developed and yet 5 miles north of New York City is still the way it was. I mean, just that won't happen. So you have to understand that. And in my view, I think that school districts, if in the ideal world, they'd be like a donut with a center hole. Mm-hmm. And the children would all be in that donut. And as the donut starts to fill with children, you've got to shrink the donut. That's the only way you can do it. And so looking at the map again very carefully and listening to the arguments that we heard from both hearings, the farm is the farthest distance-wise from Odell. And so to me, it makes the logical sense to choose that one because there will be another school, hopefully, in not too many years from now in that northern section. And it would make sense at that point that the school that's the farthest from Odell is going to be the one closer to the new school. So that's my reasoning on that one. Read all the emails, didn't answer all of them, but I read all of them, and I'm leaving this board, as coming back and leaving, and I'm leaving permanently. Not running for anything anymore, except perhaps the county line, but I'd just like to say that It ruffles my feathers, and I suspect it ruffles the feathers of anybody on any of these boards when people indicate that we're not here for the right reasons, that we're not making decisions in the best interests of children. These are very difficult decisions. You wouldn't want to make them yourself. And everybody up here, no matter who they were at the time, no matter how much I might have disagreed with them on different issues, I knew every time that every one of those people was serving here for the right reasons. So it does kind of ruffle your feathers when people make those comments. It's hard to hold your tongue, and since I don't have to hold mine anymore, I'm saying it. It's like, thank you. So that's just what I would hope, that people do that. And now to the parents of the children who are going to be affected, the other comment I would like to make is that I personally had to move into 5 different new school situations between kindergarten and graduation. It wasn't what I particularly wanted to do, I don't guess, at the time, although I don't remember it being traumatic. I got along fine, I made new friends, I moved on, and then I moved again. But looking back at it now, I see that there's a positive side to that as well, and I hope some of the parents will think of it in that way. I think it helps children learn to accept change. I think it helps children learn to go into a new situation and make new friends and be self-reliant. So it's not all a negative, and I think your children are going to be a lot more resilient than you think they might be. So I would hope that the parents would adopt a positive outlook if they are the ones that are chosen, and help their children, starting once the vote's done. Help your children look at it as more of an exciting change, more of an adventure, than as something that is going to be damaging to them. And that's my soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Minot, for your comments. And Ms. Carpenter, we're ready to hear from you now.
Okay. Well, I'm looking in front of me in the sheet that was provided me with the Odell analysis. And basically it listed all of the subdivisions that were available to us with numbers and the distance to Boger, ride times to Boger, and looking at that analysis, looking at that, I think there was other options that could be chosen. And I went over this with Dr. Saines on Friday, and we discussed this, and she understands where I stand on this, that I think some other options maybe should have been chosen. And again, looking at this, she knows where I stand with this. Again, looking at this, these children would be affected by the new school, and they will have to be moved more than one time. And again, I don't agree with this. And so they know where I stand on this. This was the reason that I brought up the opportunity of trying to utilize the Odell. This was why I even brought it up, because I wanted to keep these children together, clustered together, either by groups, the 5th graders or the 4th graders, trying to keep them together in their community, in the Odell community, instead of taking them further away. And that was why I even brought it up to start with, trying to keep them in the community, because one of the emails that I read really struck home with me, struck close to my heart. It was talking about a parent not being able to volunteer or go to the school, because something that we stress all the time, parent involvement, and it is so very important. And I've been in the Odell community or out in that area for over 35 years, and both of my children went to Odell. Both of them went completely through it, and I know how the community involvement is out in that area and how important it is. And so I've got a lot of roots out there. And so it is very important to me. And that's why, I don't know, looking at this analysis and the numbers, what the numbers are going to be, I just think if children were going to have to move, I think we should have looked at subdivisions that are closer in and, looking at the different numbers. I'm just not happy with what that was. And again, I don't want to move the children, and that's why I even brought up the Odell site and looking at that. Again, money situation, not having the money. I was told, well, hey, where are we going to get the $1 million, or where are we going to get that? And again, money's not being available. But again, with the proposal that's out there, I cannot see going with that proposal, and that's where I'm at. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Carpenter. And it's like all of board members, each one of you is entitled to your opinions. You put your time and your thoughts and emails and been out there and wrote it all over, and each of us are entitled to our thoughts and opinions. And I appreciate yours. And Mr. Kiger, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spent a lot of time thinking about this since last Monday night, as I'm sure my fellow board members did as well. And it boils down to me to one basic reason. But before I get to that, there are a couple comments that I'd like to make. I'll try to be brief. Dr. Sain, I would like to commend you for your efforts in this ordeal. I about had a heart attack when Grace said she'd been through 15 of these. This is my first one. I can't imagine doing this 14 more times. So, you have been available for questions. You sat down with, I know, myself and one other board member, and I would assume others as well. It's very difficult when you're taking the shots from both the public and the board, and you're having to take them from both directions. But you've handled yourself with great dignity and professionalism, and I, for one, appreciate that. The general population that's emailing us and asking us, and I read every email. Again, I let the chairman reply for the group. I told somebody in an email that I thought the chairman did a nice job of replying. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything that he writes in every email, but he's earned the right to speak for us as a board. But there were the tone of the emails changed a little bit, and I was a little disappointed in that. But at the end of the day, the information that we were trying to get out and that Chairman Hsu was trying to get out was all factual. There was nothing that anybody was trying to send out to deceive anybody or say one thing one day and say something else the next. The bottom line is the seven of us have to decide we need to move some children and students, and somebody's going to have to move. And when we're done, part of them are going to be disappointed and have to learn to go on, and the others are going to be happy that they got to stay. And I'm sad for both, because it would be a lot easier if we just let them stay and keep going, but we can't do that. That's not an option. I'm going to be the cold water again to Ms. Carpenter. I can't support sending anybody don't take it personal, to the old Odell that has no gym, it has no cafeteria, it has no media center, and we just pulled all of the technology out of the school 2 or 3 years ago, and it was at the stage 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, however long it's been, that we pulled everybody out. So it's kind of one of the things, to me, it's good in theory, but I'm just not sure it's practical. And I'm going to repeat, we're going to go 3 for 3, that I'm going to repeat something that's already been said, but the commissioners fund our schools. They fund the land purchase, the engineering, and the school. When we're in year 3 of a 5-year moratorium imposed by our commissioners, that doesn't mean we think they're bad people or this, that, and the other. It's our job to advocate for schools and building a school. It's their job to look at the county as a whole. They're sitting at a different side of the table than we are. We need to let them know what our needs are. They're going to do what they think is right and proper. But the public in general just needs to understand that process, and I just want to make sure that they do. We're asking for land for a school. It's going to be considered. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out or when we're going to get the funding. So we're having to deal with a current crisis and a current reality while knowing, we've known for a while. We didn't just wait. I think that was in several emails that, well, you waited too long and now we're paying the price. We've known. We've made the request, and it's going to take a little time to move forward, but it's out there and we're going to make it work. So that's again, that's just part of the reality. To the specifics of the plan, my personal opinion is that I liked Plan 1 better than Plan 2. I mentioned some reservation about targeting a specific project. I can tell you, I know your thought process. I know what you were trying to accomplish, and there was nothing sinister about it. There was nothing against that particular neighborhood. It was purely trying to find the numbers and make it work. I just have some reservation. I think our board policy of trying to keep contiguous lines as districts is what I'd like to hang my hat on. So, I'm more comfortable with Plan 1 than I am with Plan 2, and that's, again, as Mr. Shue said, we're all entitled to our opinion, and that just happens to be mine.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Blackwelder?
Well, first, I would like to say, I know most people do not realize, but I've got a very critically ill father and have been out of town and out of state back and forth for the last several weeks. So I have not been able to answer emails, but that doesn't mean I haven't read them, haven't been able to respond, but I've definitely done my due diligence and my homework. I was not available for the public hearing, but I was in contact with Chairman Shue, and I spent some good time with Dr. Sane today going over the visual maps. And, this is my 8th year on the board, and this is my 5th redistricting. Maybe not 14 or 15, but within that time frame, that tells you what we have to deal with. And it does upset you when people make statements, that you're not in it for the right reasons, because I can tell you, we are in it for the right reasons, and we have a lot of kids to look at when we're looking at these plans. And it keeps you up at night. I spent a lot of time with the last redistricting plan that we did, and we knew this was coming again. People say, you should get ahead of the game, but you can't ever get ahead of the game because we are dependent upon the commissioners to make that happen for us. One of the issues that we have is when you're pulling these numbers, people don't always see, how you do it. So I'm not sure what y'all proposed at the public hearing. I wish the maps would have been available tonight because I think that would have kind of helped. But when you're looking at these, when we talk about Plan 1, Plan 2, not being available in here for some of this, I got to see what it was like to say, well, what is Plan 1 and Plan 2, just like some of the general audience has been. But the difference between Plan 1 and Plan 2 is that Plan 1 is pulling from 4 or 5 or 6 different subdivisions in a huge radius across that map, and that is a nightmare for transportation, and I think that's the real crux of, what you're trying to avoid. And that's why it seems like you're targeting one particular neighborhood when in actuality you're getting that number, that magical number that you're trying to attain, and only transportation is affected to that area. So that is a huge battle, that we contend with each time we do a redistricting plan. But it's been eye-opening for me to have to come back and kind of catch up on all the different scenarios and not having been here through all of it. Because sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you can't get outside that box, as a board member. So it really was good for me to be able to come in today, take a look at it, listen to what all the arguments were, listen to the public hearing tapes and hear what people had to say, read the newspaper articles and put it together and kind of piece it. But it does make more sense to all of us, well, the majority of us, Blake, I'll take you out of that one, to look at one area to pull from, because actually it's the furthest from Odell. That's what you want to target because you're looking for an area that's the furthest away from that particular school when you're looking to a new school. And that does make a lot of sense to you. It doesn't when it's your child, and I understand that. My child got redistricted when he was in kindergarten. Right out of the gate when we started, I was right on that side talking to the board and throwing stones just as well. So I've been on both sides, but I've learned how hard it is, to put a redistricting plan in place and to do what's right for all of the kids and what's right for the school system. So I do agree with Plan 2. And we'll go on record for that. I would like to say I apologize. I got a couple of emails that people thought I was not responding, but it's like I've said, I've had a very critical situation with my dad, but I have done my homework, and to those of you that had sent me some personal emails, I thank you and I appreciate your thoughts and your prayers for my family.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwelder. Ms. Furtenbaugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll say, like my fellow board members before me, that there's obviously a big pros and cons situation, but Dr. Sane provided some additional information to us, actually breaking out the numbers for different areas out of Plan 1 and Plan 2 in the past week. And when I total those numbers up, and if my math is right here, the Farms has 83, so to Ms. Blackwelder's point, there's a concentration of students. And so when looking at transportation, people said, how can it possibly be cheaper to transport children an extra mile beyond where another subdivision is, or map 1? It's less expensive from the standpoint of the students are concentrated in one area. The farms also has the highest possibility of permit growth as well. So you take those two converging factors, the greatest number of students in a concentrated area, plus the highest number of possible permits to pull, and intent of the developer to continue development even beyond their current boundaries. And that, to me, makes the decision. When we look at some of the subdivisions that are closer down, right at 73, the numbers are just simply not as high, and you have to go, I say, much greater distances to have those students. And to kind of paraphrase Ms. Minett's comments about the students being the chosen ones, I will tell you, when my neighborhood was redistricted from Weinkauf to Boger, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, no one wanted to move. Everybody's up in arms. My kids were past elementary school. But then they took the perspective of they were the chosen ones. And I have no doubt, we as a board have seen the Boger community to be extremely active. They've received a number of grants and awards. They have the best playground, nature trails. They have access to all the high school, middle school fields when and if they want to do something there. They're really in a special place. It's a special school. So I have no qualms when people are worried about numbers and demographics and test scores, and I say you will achieve to your ability for every student and with the parents' support. So I wasn't quite a tiger mom, but maybe close. But kids will achieve to the level of parental support. And so I would just encourage the parents to be excited for your kids. You may have a broken heart personally because you wanted a certain thing, but help your children to achieve. And Mrs. Minot, I am not sure if I have achieved 15 redistrictings, but I am certain I am chasing you on that number. Because I came on the board in the middle of, I think we opened a record 4 schools in 1 year. We were pretty much building every year, so that was exciting, but yet nerve-wracking too. And so I will just say I commend this board because 4 of us are leaving in beginning of December. And we will know late tomorrow night who will be succeeding us. So good luck to the gentleman on the ballot. But I want to commend this board for taking this on because we could have let it pass. But we felt it was our duty to try to make this happen and make the decision before people came on with huge learning curves who had never been through redistricting, as Mr. Kiger had stated. So with that said, Mr. Chair, I am able to support map number 2.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Mr. Furr, do you have any questions, comments?
I don't have really any questions, but and I don't want to be redundant, and I appreciate what each board member has said, and you know, like we've said before, this is the redistricting is about the only thing you do. This is for you new board members. This is the only thing you'll do that really tugs on your heart, and it is kind of difficult, and you'll lose a little bit of sleep over it. But everything else is okay. But with that said, you know, which much thought, and as well as fortunately, a lot of us on this side of the over here, we've been through the redistricting, and I said just like Holly. I was mad. I think that may have been part of the reason I ran 4 years ago. Who knows? But I got tired of it. But and maybe some of you people out there will want to come and join this side of the ranks as well. But with that said, I as well. I've changed my mind probably. I don't know. I talked to Blake this morning, I think, and I've told him I've changed my mind about every 15 minutes in the last 2 days. I mean, that's how tough this really is, and. But when you look at the big picture and what we're required to do and what we're trying to do and mandated to do, I as well would support number 2, option number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Furr. And I want to add to what Mr. Furr said about things tugging on your heart. Well, actually, there's 2 things, Tim, and that is, when these kids, the second for me, is when these kids cross the stage down at the event center and they get that diploma, and you know that you had a part in that, and you just look at them and you shake their hand and you look in their eyes and you wonder what the future holds for them, and knowing that you had a small part in that, in helping direct their path of education. And unfortunately, redistricting is a part of it. But one of the things that I've learned in the last several weeks as we've been dealing with this is, and parents, you don't want to hear about how many times we've been through redistricting. You don't want to hear about our own personal, when we were redistricted, our kids and all. You don't want to hear about that because that's our kids. Well, all of these kids are our kids. All 30,000 of them are our kids. The board's kids. These are our children. But, you know, you're looking at it from the way that I see it and looking at it from both sides of the fence here. The parents are looking at this as the board saying, well, this is a short-term fix. No, this is not a short-term fix. Dr. Sain, you and I know, and this board knows, that the school that we're going to build at some point in that area there is going to survive 50 to 100 years from now. These schools aren't just going to be there for the next 5, 6, 10, 12, 15 years. We're talking about 50 to 100 years in a community that you will long be gone from. And it will affect other residents that move to where you live now, because you're not going to live there from here on out more than likely. We live in a very transient society these days. And so it definitely will affect your children right now. But I can promise you, though, from experience, and like I said, I know you don't want to hear it, but I've seen it happen so many times in my going on 10 years. Well, actually, it is 10 years of all the redistricting plans. We got the greatest people in the world right here in Cabarrus County, the greatest parents. They love their children. They care about their well-being, just like we do. But then again, we look at both sides of the coin, where you just look at one. We see both sides, and we know that what we're doing is, in the long term, going to be best for kids. And so I hope that you will take what I've had to say, and it will help you better understand the decisions that we have to make. Okay, with that being said, at this time, board members, do you have any other questions, comments, concerns that you want to make? Because we're going to put W.R. Odell redistricting to bed here in a few minutes. Everybody clear? Okay, so the motion, what we're asking is that the motion be approved as recommended by Dr. Sain, that we will be moving, Plan 2 would be moving the farms at River Point to Boger Elementary School. And we can reword that motion if that's not good enough, but I think we have what Dr. Sain has here in her recommendation. So I'm asking for a motion that this recommendation be approved as presented. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Ms. Blackwater made the motion. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that and make sure we include the grandfathering for rising
Right.
fifth graders whose parents provide their transportation.
Right, and that's in this here, and we'll have to write that out to include that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Ms. Furtenbaugh. And so, Ms. Furtenbaugh, are you seconding that motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Ms. Blackwater made the motion. Ms. Furtenbaugh seconded it. Okay, board members, all in favor of this motion, say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Say nay.
Nay.
Okay, Ms. Monroe, the vote is 5-2 with Ms. Carpenter and Mr. Kiger declining the vote. Is that correct? All right, it stands with 5-2. Thank you, Ms. Monroe. All right, now, board members, we'll move on to the report section of our agenda tonight, and it will start with 6.1, and we have Kelly Klutz on her way to the podium, and she's going to give us the QSCB financial report.
Good evening. On our QSCB financial report, I would call your attention to the column requested budget amendments, because you'll have a budget amendment later in the evening for those items. We're requesting that we move 3 line items. One is for the Central Cabarrus project for the replacement of the windows and doors. We were needing additional funds there, $31,836. I'll also call your attention to the Mount Pleasant Elementary just below the next section, $16,774. And I'm going to go back up because I skipped over the PLC J and Freeze remodel, where we're asking to add an additional $1,912. So that would conclude our budget amendments where we're asking to move money. And then for the other part of the report, I'll just call your attention to primarily we have We're 98, 99% complete on most of our projects except for the Northwest project, and there's some minor projects there. Also, the roof project at Jay and Freeze. But otherwise, we're fairly complete on our QSCB projects. Are there questions that I can answer for you?
Okay, board members, does anyone have any questions in reference to this report?
Mr. Chair, if we could just be reminded, what is the last day that we have to use these funds up by?
April 2014, I believe.
Okay, so we have just still another year.
April 2014.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. All right, no other questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Ms. Klutz. I think that's all you had, is that right? Okay, all right, we'd like to have 6.2 with Mr. Burnett to the podium, and he's going to talk with us about the project status on QSCB. Okay, Mr. Burnett.
Thank you. Actually, from last month, there really hasn't been too many changes. Do want to call your attention to several of the active projects. Central Cabarrus High School, the windows and doors project that continues to be ongoing. Much of that work is in the punch listing phase. We do have some work that you're going to hear about a little bit later, or actually change order work related to asbestos work. And that work is going to be, once given the go-ahead, that work's going to be worked around the school schedule, but it's going to be much of the month of December, possibly January, just depending again on the availability of the site. Concord High School controls replacement and Northwest Cabarrus High School controls replacement. That is actually entering its last phase as we are doing the systems training for maintenance staff. That's scheduled actually for this Friday. Jay and Freeze Middle School, the change order that you, funding transfer that you just approved, I think $1,912 is for tying in two separate independent fire alarms so that they are communicating with each other. That's the remaining work there. Central Cabarrus High School electrical vault upgrades. Much of that work really has to wait till the Christmas holidays. That work is scheduled. They've done as much as they can up until that point. And the various schools' breaker panels, that's also known as the Arc Flash project. 8 schools out of 24 schools have been visited and analyzed. We did get some news from our designer for the Jay and Freeze Middle School partial roof replacement, and that is he asked if we wanted to actually have some insulation on our roof, and of course we do. There isn't roof insulation currently, so we have asked him to take a look at that, see what the cost impact will be. Certainly we know that that is something that will be saving us money, on energy costs, but we'll see what the impact is. So we have asked him to let us know what that cost will be. And for Northwest Cabarrus High School, we did have the pre-bid meeting today, and so that project is in the design phase, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Any questions?
Okay, board members, do you have any questions, concerns you need to direct to Mr. Burnett?
Going down the road, we just pipe it up.
If you, I don't have any. If anybody has any,
This may not be a fair question since Mr. Whitkey's out of town, but do you happen to know what the status of the furniture is for the dining room at Concord High School?
Yes, that project furniture was specified. It was bid. Some of it has been ordered. Some of it has not, as there were some issues with some various things. So some of that is ordered. Some of it's still pending.
Do we have a projected delivery date for whatever's been ordered?
I'd have to look. It's 60 days from when it was ordered.
okay, Mr. Kiger, you got your answer. You good? Any other comments from the board? Questions, Ms.
Yeah.
Furtenbaugh?
Mr. Chair, and related to Mr. Kiger's comment, there was some furniture was going to be substituted because we didn't have enough bids. And I'm not sure if you or Len were going to go back, and was there really a change? And basically, has the furniture order been concluded, or is there still something up in the air?
There aren't any unanswered questions. There aren't any furniture that needs to be rebid. The staff felt that they had the direction from the board to proceed. There was, out of the 11 items, I believe there was one that had received 2 bids, and that the understanding was that we could proceed with going to the low bidder on that. If that's in error, please
No,
make
but
me
there was,
aware.
the low bidder didn't want to participate because they didn't get the big order, and so I wasn't sure, there was something about, they were going to eliminate one of the pieces of the order in order to complete it.
Yeah, actually, and I can update you on that. Several of the vendors did not meet spec, so we would go to the low bid on this particular item or on that particular item. We'd get their submittals, we'd research the submittals, we'd find, in one case, that it didn't have the warranties that were required, or it didn't have the construction that was required. So to get to your point, that bidder did decide to participate because as everything fell out, the order was large enough for them to continue on.
Okay, very good. We didn't hear that update, I don't believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Everybody good? Anybody else got any questions? Ms. Blackwater, any questions? Mr. Furr? Mr. Kiger, anything else? Ms. Carpenter? Ms. Minot? Okay, thank you, Dave, for your report, and we appreciate you being here tonight. Board members, we're going to move on into our items for discussion for the action or consent agenda for the 19th of November for our regularly scheduled, well, it won't be a regularly scheduled meeting because, as you know, next Monday will be Veterans Day, and most of the board members will be tied up with the school board annual conference, so we won't be here. So we moved the meeting to the 19th. So these items will be open for discussion tonight to either be placed on action or consent. First item is the budget amendments, and Ms. Klutz, you're there, and we're waiting on you.
Thank you, sir. We'll start with our state budget amendment. The first one that we'll address is we're actually reducing funds for EC, and we're sending to charter schools, and generally the state will adjust our funds and project our funds for our regular funding, but for EC, exceptional children, they do not do a projection at the beginning, so they'll adjust those for actual numbers throughout the year. This is normal for us, so don't be alarmed or surprised. So next month, you will see how the state did their projection, and they're going to give us money back because they projected too many going to charter schools, and we have more coming back into our system. So this is the second year of the trend where we're doing that, and so I'll share that again with you next month. But I thought that was good news, so I went ahead and shared it this month too. Also what you're seeing here is an increase in state funding where we did our projections and we came in a little bit more, so you're always happy to see additional funds come in. The next budget amendment is federal, so we're receiving additional federal funds, or we're reclassing. Also, I'll call your attention to the Title I. When we were budgeting our Title I, there was a concern that we might have to send some of those funds back. We know that we're not going to have to, so we were able to allocate those funds to the schools, so that's what you're seeing there. The next budget amendment is capital outlay funds, and these are the funds that we just talked about, the QSCB. We're reclassing those QSCB funds. And then the final one is the local special revenue fund. The first one is a grant that we're received from DPI, and it's a child nutrition program where it's basically a flow-through grant that we're going to be able to receive indirect costs for, and our former child nutrition director is doing some work for DPI for us and for DPI. And then we also are recording the Communities and Schools grant. Are there any questions?
Okay, board members, there you have the report from Ms. Klutz, and I need to answer questions, concerns at this time, or are we, Ms.
I have to
Furtenbaugh?
have one question. Is the Communities and Schools grant for the PLC?
It is, yes, and it's just for that one salary.
Okay,
It is.
thanks. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Any other questions, concerns on this budget report? Okay, board members, are we good for the consent agenda on the 19th? Can I see everybody's approval? Okay, we're good for consent. Okay, Ms. Klutz, consent agenda on the 19th. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move right on to the next issue here that we're going to talk about, and this is where we're going to talk about a menu of local option goals. This is where Miss Beverly Mack from the Opportunity School is going to talk to us about her local option goals. And so when you get ready, Miss Mack, we're waiting on you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, board members. Okay. Okay, right here. Okay, I'm new at this. We are really happy about what we're doing this year at the Opportunity School because of additional staffing, support from the district office, and a new plan for behavioral and academic success. So we're happy to share that, but we did decide to look at 3 goals that would really enhance our program. So our local options, we're looking at for our option 1, which is under goal 3, school safety and student conduct. Our first goal, in previous years at the Opportunity School, students served a suspension for either a semester or a year and automatically transitioned to their home schools. With the implementation of the new positive behavior support level system at the Opportunity High and Middle School, we are aiming for 50% of students who successfully transition back to their respective home schools will not return to the alternative program during the academic school year 2012-13. So do you all want questions after
Let me ask
finished
this,
with all 3?
Ms. Mack.
Yes.
Now, keep in mind, the board's had this probably for at least a week, couple
Okay.
weeks, and what I'd like for you to do is explain to the board the purpose of us having this particular item on here tonight. I mean, I know that it's going to be on either the action or consent agenda, but what is the reason for having a menu of local options for Cabarrus County Opportunity School? Because, see, we've had this, and we've had a chance to review the goals and
Okay.
what you're wanting to achieve there.
Okay.
And unless the board, has questions that they would like to ask, but if you could explain that to us, and then the board members have had time to review it, and then after, you tell us what you need to tell us, and then we'll
Okay.
see if the board has questions about your goals, okay?
Okay, our state standard for alternative learning programs, or ALPs, all ask for boards to approve a menu of local options or goals that the school will be working on for that year. So this is part of our policy for our alternative learning program so that we can focus on 3 specific goals, and that is a state mandate for alternative programs. So that's the reason it's in front of you. And our goal is to implement it successfully. So does everyone understand the purpose of the local options? And so I'll just go through the 3 that we're trying to build upon. And the first goal, like I said, because we have started a new behavioral support leveling system at Opportunity High and Middle School, students have to work through level 1 to level 2 to level 3 and 4, and that's based on daily attendance, academics, and behavior. And we track that daily, and we have students now, we have 70% of our students in high school already achieving at level 3. So we've seen a lot of positive gains with that. One of the problems in past years or previous years, there was no transition piece in place. Students just went back after serving a certain amount of time. So now we have goals for each individual student based on behavior, academics, and socialization. So those 3 things are very important for us. So we hope to reduce recidivism so that students don't go back to the home school, make the same mistakes, and have to come back to us. So we're really working on goals for the students personally. We have a behavioral specialist that meets with the students, as well as my assistant principal and myself and a full-time social worker. So we're really happy about that piece. Okay, I'll move on to goal. The second option or goal for us is student progress and proficiency. Dr. Shepard says again and again, he wants high ratings. He wants to be one of the top districts in the state. Well, we want our alternative school to be the best in the state as well. So the percentage of students who were proficient on our end of course and end of grade assessments for last year was 32.12%. We plan to increase this percentage by 5% during the 2012-13 academic year by developing a professional development plan for teachers geared to higher level thinking and engagement strategies. And our goal is that this professional development for teachers will impact student performance. And we did choose 5 as a workable goal. A lot of our students have not had a lot of academic success. They are at risk for certain reasons. So that's what we're working on, moving up year by year, trying to improve with our testing. And then thirdly, our third goal is community involvement. Because of the significance of community partnerships and local support, the Opportunity School will increase active partnerships. Currently, we have 8 really active working with us as a school community, with at least 5 additional organizations who can offer mentoring, proctoring, and support services for students and staff. And we have targeted different agencies, faith-based organizations, community individuals, and we've been having meetings, and it's been very productive. So we really want to reach out into the community so that our students can have partnerships with caring advocates and adults. And those are our 3 goals for this year. And we did bring a few extra pictures. We wanted to show some of the external changes we're making at the Opportunity School located at the Glenn Center. CFA did I Love My City campaign, and they really came out and did a great job with, we had about 200 volunteers, students, staff, and we spent an entire weekend just working on our campus. And they even donated and gave us a spirit rock. It's the first time we've ever had a rock for students to paint. We've got some of our students there, along with CFA members, really working that day, just showing their support for the school. And those were some of the improvements that we made on that particular weekend. And I think there's 2 more that show some more of our volunteers. That's the side facing the Cedar Street entrance. We worked on that as well. And that's what we see now, our revitalized Opportunity School at the Glenn Center. It's a beacon of light right now. We're very happy that the community came out and supported us. But we really feel like we're doing some good things there, very rewarding day to day.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. I agree with you. I just wonder if they'd all come to my house and do a little work. Looks like they've done a good job there, and I appreciate what they've done.
It was a very good day. We just really felt, the support of the community when they came out that day. So if we can continue building partnerships such as that, our possibilities are limitless.
Okay, I think that you've done an excellent job, and I commend you for leading that up there. But now, reference to your goals and that type thing, I'd like to give the board opportunity to ask you questions that they may have in reference to what you set aside. And we'll start on Ms. Minett's side if you have any questions or comments about the goals that they've set forth here.
This question may not be for you. It may be more for Dr. Shepard. Are there any plans to connect the new initiative that you have with Senator Lee and this school, the children who are attending that school?
We haven't thought of it from that perspective, but I do think there's a common goal in helping students who are not succeeding in school. I think that, along with what we're doing with our PLC, and all programs where we're serving students who might not be succeeding, need to be brought into the plan and looking at how we can help those students.
And then I have a question for you. I noticed you mentioned faith-based organizations coming in as tutors and so forth, and you had some. Have you had an outreach to some of the downtown churches? Do you have a speaker that can speak to a group at those churches to find tutors and so forth?
Yes, I've actually met with 2 or 3 of the downtown churches, as well as Ms. Palo with Communities and Schools, who's one of our partners. She has arranged a meeting for us. We've had a meeting with the Refuge as well, and I always volunteer to go speak because I love to talk. And I feel like I can be the school's biggest cheerleader. So we have made contact. Some have already maintain partnerships with other schools. We have to, sometimes we are competing with the older traditional schools in the community, but we've gotten some really great feedback and great ideas, and my school social worker, she's been doing a lot of that as well. But yes, we really wanted to target our community since we are there in the center of historic Concord. Concord First Assembly. And they actually prefer us to say CFA. That's what I was told. So, but Concord First Assembly did the second weekend in September for us. So the materials, the time, the donations. I think they did Culture and Web and Concord High as well, and a part of Barbara Scotia College.
Thank you, Ms. Minott. Ms. Carpenter.
Well, wonderful job.
Thank you.
One thing that I was curious on goal 2, or option 2, goal 5, were those numbers, did you have those numbers from the previous year? Or did you have this goal the previous year, or is this the first time you have had this?
Oh, no, that particular goal was a goal last year, but it focused more on reading and just the reading and the math. We wanted to look at all of our composite scores, middle and high school, so we decided to look at what 32% is pretty low.
That's what I was looking at, and I thought, oh, you're only wanting to go up 5%?
Yeah, but
let's really shoot for it. You know, I'm one, I like to shoot for the
Right.
stars, so hey, let's go 10,
Yeah.
because that is so low. That's why I was wondering, are we just trying to...
Yeah, we're really trying to gauge the success of our new program, and we're trying to see how we go this first year. And I think we can probably bite off a little bit more and try to shoot for the moon the next year once
Okay.
we get our feet.
I'm one, I really, I'm a lot
We
like
have some very
you.
bright
We-
students, but we have some students who are really struggling as well.
Oh,
So
well, with that, and I see Matthew coming up here. What we got, Matthew?
I just want to point out that for these particular goals, we receive pretty specific directions from DPI and how those goals should be written. And if you'll notice, they're kind of different than what you might see in her school improvement plan,
Right.
which are much more aggressive types of goals that you'll see in her school improvement plan, where these we're cautioned to basically take little steps at a time and move the school forward.
Okay. Well, my other thing I wanted to mention when you were talking about the community involvement, one of the things that was mentioned just recently, you mentioned communities in school. We did have Ms. Palo come to the Salvation Army Women's Auxiliary as one of the speakers, and she told about communities in school and did get some mentors from our some of the women there,
Right.
and told what communities in school did and told about the Glenn Center, some of the students there, and I think it
Right.
gave some great exposure because a lot of people do not realize what the Glenn Center does talk
Correct.
about the students or even communities in school. So this was a great opportunity. And like I say, got some volunteers, again, getting the community involved. So I think this all worked together
Right.
very, very well. And hopefully we'll work with your option 3, your goal 7. So hopefully this will help you with that goal there.
Okay, great
Okay,
point.
thank you, Ms. Carter. Mr. Kiger?
Thank you. I'll be very brief. In your presentation, you mentioned the magic words, we want to be the best in the state. Set the bar high
Right.
and keep reaching, push everybody further than they will push themselves.
Right.
And I firmly believe you personally and we as a board and a system will be successful. So good luck. The pictures look outstanding.
you.
I haven't been there in quite some time, and I'd like to go see that. But
Well,
the
thank you.
pictures really do look outstanding. And thank you to CFA for
yes.
let's publicly tell them thank you for the help in that project.
Thank you, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Blackwelder?
Beverly, I do have a couple questions. And the pictures are great. To put this in perspective for the viewing audience and those looks, that this is the old Concord High School building.
Right.
I think that really says a lot for that building. It looks great. The first question I have is option 1, goal 3. Now, I heard you say that it's going to change and the students will have to progress through leveling, 1 to 4. My question is, and the majority of these go there because they're sent by the school, but for the board action that are sent there due to grievances, that type of
Yeah.
thing, if they don't exceed or they achieve that level 4, but they've actually served their time, that the board has placed them in that position, what happens?
Typically, for us, what we have communicated to students and parents is that level 4 is the promised land. You have to achieve that. If students are not attending school, which had been a problem in the past, attendance was very poor with some students. They weren't passing any classes or earning any credits, and the behaviors were highly disruptive. And in order to alleviate that and change that and transform that behavior, we have implemented, this particular program. So I'm not sure about how we would look at someone who's placed there by the board. Like I said, most of the students are adopting this and embracing it because they realize that's their ticket to transition back. Although some have asked to stay, which is a good thing as well. But
Let me just add on to that. In the past, what we had done is we had long-term suspended students, and then for the term of their long-term suspension, they were at the Opportunity School. We have not been long-term suspending students. What we've been doing is alternatively placing students, so there's not a term of time in which they have to serve over there. The point is for Beverly to work with them, rehabilitate them or refocus them as quickly as possible so that we can move them back into the regular setting. So it's not you go for a semester or you go for a year and then you get to do something else. Well, you can earn the right to do something else. You can earn the right to go back.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is in the scenario where we've sent them
Right.
for a specific amount of time, if they do
Right.
not achieve that specific level that you're wanting them to before they get their ticket back to their home school, what happens?
Right, and in that case, if they're behaving so poorly where they're going to continue to get in trouble, then we've got 3 different levels of services provided by the Glenn Center. One is in the full day services. We can also reduce that to partial day. The second part of that is afternoon school on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 6 or 4 to 7. And the third opportunity is they connect in from home via the internet and they do their coursework that way. You're going to see very few children who are long-term suspended and are sent over there for that reason. It's pretty significant behavior now that gets you to that point.
Okay, and the other question I have, how did you say that you advertise in order to get Goal 7, option number 3 out there, get the word out there for organizations?
What we have done is
Excuse me, Miss Mack, will you turn your mic on, please? The cameraman, they need to hear what you got to say.
Is that better? Okay. So we've just been doing a lot of word of mouth and phone calling at this point, just trying to do a grassroots kind of building up of what we need, and so far it's been very productive.
You got your answers, Ms. Blackwelder? Okay, Ms. Furtenbaugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Mack, I have a question. This is maybe more foundational, but when this is called menu of local options, and then I have option 1, 2, and 3. Option is a word meaning choice, not meaning we're doing these things. Goals are things we do. So to me, the word option and goal are in conflict. So can you just kind of explain why is this called a menu of options?
I asked Mr. Fail the same thing. It's been, to my knowledge, it has been that terminology used.
To your point, I agree. It's the DPI's language. However, the reason that options was used, whether we agree with it or not, is because she actually has a list of options, and from those she pulls out these goals from that comprehensive list of where she wants to have her goals. Although in the end, we're creating goals.
So, and where this longer list, are these all of our local district goals, or these are DPI gives you 20 things and you must pick 3 you're working on?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
DPI gives you a list.
So so this goal 3 and 7 is off of the DPI master list?
Yes.
So we don't have a goal 1, 2, 4, and 6 in the middle. We just picked these 3.
Correct.
Okay. That basic foundation was not there, and these words were not making sense. Okay. So to the item of option 2, goal 5, student progress and proficiency. That title says student, but yet the goal seems to be driven to professional development for teachers. I don't see, for me at least, I don't see enough in there about students. And I'll just be very honest, when we have visited several times before your tenure there, it seemed to be very unstructured from staff and students.
Right.
Certainly not structured enough for me at all. And I have these conversations with Dr. Shepard previously. So I guess I would like to see something in there that is more focused on students. I think you can have as a side note professional development, but I don't see, that title says student progress and proficiency, but it's not focused on students.
Right.
And 5% to me is not enough of a focus on students. A 5% goal due to staff development? I don't know.
Well,
I'm not comfortable with that.
Okay. Yeah, my team kind of developed this in looking at, in the past, you're right, there had not been a great deal of structure. And we also had teachers who were not really, had their heart in working with at-risk students. And we've had a lot of new staffing this year with teachers, and we have 3 or 4 brand new teachers who are first-year teachers who needed the professional development, and we want to build them up so that they can empower the students instructionally in the classroom. We feel it's a direct link, the professional development and the empowerment of teachers to the empowerment of students and their progress.
Okay. And I'll be honest, Mr. Chair, I would like to see this goal 5 enhanced for, the title says student. And to only say a 5% improvement, which would take it to 37%, and the focus is on professional development, and then you're subsetting it even more to say only the new teachers, I'm not comfortable with that.
Oh, go ahead.
There are two pieces to this. To go towards the 5%, just want to reiterate that we do get pretty clear direction from the state around giving us some guidance around what kind of numbers they might suggest for us in those realms. On the other hand, the school improvement plan, again, has much more aggressive types of goals. Now, with that said, I do understand what you're saying around this particular goal, saying we're going to increase student achievement, but we're going to do that by providing professional development only to new teachers. So I get I think I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, it
so,
just
and I
doesn't,
think,
it's not,
yes.
I don't care if the state
If-
says do something, we don't do things minimalistic in this district. You don't get to be in the top 10 of some of the categories we've achieved that in by being minimalist.
So going to the point of the strategy written into the goal, if we could perhaps focus on not so much the professional development, but they're actually going to deliver these high-yield strategies within the classroom with students and expand that beyond just new teachers, and that we expect all teachers to do that. And the research backs up that would give us gains in student achievement. If we rewrote it that way, it would be more acceptable.
Okay, great comment, Matthew. Hold that, and it's on. Are we on tape? Yeah, so you can go back and see hear the words you said. If you could take part of that was, I guess I would be happier with this goal. And I will apologize. I have been out of town, and I've had a lot of things going on in my personal life as well, so I couldn't read everything and email everybody. I didn't even have a computer with me the last 4 days. So, but to have something in here that professional development for teachers will impact student performance by, and then add in some of the phrasing you just said.
Yeah, we can definitely work
So
on that. And
that would make me feel more comfortable.
Okay.
Thank you. And then to goal 7, I think Mrs. Carpenter just gave you one of your 5. The Salvation Army
Salvation
Women's
Army.
Group. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Mr. Furr, you have any comments, questions?
I don't have a whole lot as usual, but I'd just like to thank Miss Mack for the work she does. I've been fortunate this past season, football season, to work with some kids that have been in your program, and I think they've turned the corner. They even talk about studying and telling me what they made on their test that particular day. So I see a lot of progress in some of these kids.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Furr.
we thank you.
I
That's a
appreciate
good
that.
report there. Now, Dr. Shepard has a couple of comments he wants to make. Dr. Shepard.
I just want to brag on you a little bit and ask you to tell the board about the community meeting you had at your school and when you're going to have the next one. I'd like to, I think that was a great day for you and for your school.
We had a community outreach day. That was another part of our grassroots program of trying to inform our community, our stakeholders, our parents, that, hey, this is a really great learning environment. We know that there are reasons why students are there, but because they're there, there's a lot that we can do for them academically and behaviorally. So it's not wasted time at all. But we decided to bring in folks from the legal system. The DJJ had representatives there. Jesse Blackwelder and Cynthia Seaforth came from teen court. Our county manager, Mr. Downs, was there. We had staff members. We had district people there, and it was just a really great day. We went through our new program, our new how we deliver services and instruction, our new vision of just revitalizing and re-engaging kids to go back to the home schools and being able to play football or be in the band or take your art classes. There are reasons why you want to go back to your traditional school, but I think the highlight was the students. We had students who were there last year, and they have returned to us for certain reasons, and one is a hearing impaired student. She needs to stay with us. But they spoke and talked about the differences, and we didn't coach them. We just asked them to write their own and discuss it, and some read, some just got up and spoke spontaneously and just really got to the heart of how things are different. So I do think, what you were not seeing in the past with the unstructured environment, that has significantly changed, and that's one of the things that we're very proud of.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. And the only comment that I have is that I feel like that the Opportunity Center there, the Glenn Center, is one of Cabarrus County Schools' biggest assets because simply those kids that's there have a second chance. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they may drop out and lose their education forever. So what you're doing there is a program that will help turn the kids around, rehabilitate them so they can go back to their school and we can get good reports like Mr. Furr was saying about the athletics. They talk about the scores, they talk about things that they're doing now in a positive way. And, so I think that, we're definitely moving in the right direction with the Glenn Center, and we appreciate all that you're doing there. And based on what Ms. Furtenbaugh was saying, I think that we need to move this to the action agenda. Is that what everybody wants to do?
Yes.
Okay, action agenda, and then you can come back to us on the 19th with the recommended changes for this, and then we'll vote on it and move forward.
Sounds like a plan. And you all feel free to come visit me at the Glenn Center.
Thank you again, Ms. Mack.
Thank you.
Nice having
Pleasure
with you
to be here.
tonight. Yes. Okay, board members, we're going to move on to another item here for discussion, and that's Dr. Colleen Sane will be at the podium, where we're going to be looking at some policies, revision of policies, and I think most of these are School Board Association revisions. And but Dr. Sane, you go over them with us, and we'll move on.
I'm going to just tell you these are all from North Carolina School Board Association, and they all came with a recommendation for changes. I just want to share just a little bit. Professional and staff development, that particular policy encourages systems to provide teachers with staff development in the area of technology and instructional technology, and it puts that language in there. Policy 2430, dissemination and preservation of policies. This allows us to move from the paper book to the digital age and requires us to keep at least one paper copy on hand for view if the public should choose to see it. But those of you who prefer to get your digital copies, we're now following school board policy after we pass this one. Lesson planning. As one of the requirements for lesson planning, to provide for the effective use of technology resources. You have to give your objective, you have to give your assessments, you have to give your relationship to essential standards or Common Core. In addition to that, they want you to show how you're going to use technological resources. 3210 is an interesting policy. It's bringing us again into the modern age as we move away from the idea of primary and supplementary instructional materials, where we have the textbook was the primary material and the weekly reader or whatever else we brought on was a supplementary material. Now materials are instructional materials, and it changes that to eliminate that concept. It does allow, though the parent continue to allow parents to inspect and to object to instructional materials that they find troublesome. Testing and assessment program, there's a provision in that one for us to move to online testing for end of course and end of grade testing. Assignment to classes. Traditionally, the principal has had the responsibility and authority to assign children to classes, and there are two provisions in which the principal has to follow the law rather than choice, and that is in the case of twins or multiple births, when the parent requests within 5 days of attending school to have a meeting, and the parent can either request that the multiple births be together or separated, and the principal has to have that conversation and then follow that wish for at least the first 9 weeks to determine if that combination of children is the right way to go. The second one is in military. Folks who are in the military and are moved by the military, it compels the schools to move to provide a schedule as close as possible to the schedule the student had before, and the purpose of that is to minimize the effect of change on students who are being moved just due to the fact that their parents are in the military. That would include a student who comes out of an IB program. We would be compelled to find a place for them in an IB program if we had one at that grade level. In criminal behavior, there was a statement in the previous policy 4335 on criminal behavior that required principals.
I have a question.
Okay.
First of all, if you could state the policy number.
Sure.
As you're
I'm sorry.
proceeding, because I have them open. I'm trying to flip
Okay.
to get to my comments. But Mr. Chair, if I may ask a question about 4155, which is the assignment to classes policy.
Right.
Of course, we don't look at these very often, some of these deep buried policies, but this one brings to mind, and I guess I would actually like to have our teacher liaison comment on this as well. In the particular area where parents may submit to the principal written request for assignment or reassignment as long as the parents provide a compelling reason for the request, I worry that we have unintentional segregation of students in some of our, especially elementary schools. Because parents submit requests that they want their child in with a certain teacher. And when that occurs,
Right.
the teacher fills up the classroom with parents who are very active and involved in their schools. So you start coming from two educated parents, higher incomes, and even if the school is very diverse, you have segregated
Right.
the students in the school. And so other teachers have students who are less affluent, may have challenges, more challenges than normal, may have difficult parent situations to deal with, whatever. And so I worry that our principals are not following the written and compelling reason portion. So I'm not sure if you would like to comment, but if you...
As far as I know, there are several requests given to our principals every year. And speaking from experience, I do know that those requests aren't necessarily honored. We always look at the good of the child and the style of teaching that the teacher has. They usually look at that. I honestly don't know what goes on behind closed doors when they are making these class lists. But on occasion, you do see certain parents that are involved, their children ending up in the same classroom. Now, I don't know if that's just by coincidence, but I do know that every year my principal makes it a point with all the requests that they do not honor it straight from the parents. They always look at the style of teaching from the teacher.
Thank you. And I think that's exactly how it should be, Dr. Shepard. Right. I don't think that necessarily is how it happens at every school, especially some of our more diverse schools. And so, maybe it is time to remind principals and review, Dr. Sain, whatever might be the compelling reasons, because I agree, you should look at learning styles. One of my children benefited from being, not at my request, but at the principal's request, to specifically place my daughter many years ago. And that was the beginning of a successful school career, as opposed to the first year, which was not very successful. So that can be very valuable when they match learning styles with teaching styles. But I do worry about, like I said, this inadvertent segregation that we are having.
I think, too, I know when I was a principal, I would not honor a request for a specific individual, and I know there are very many principals who agree with me on this one, but we would ask the parent to talk about what qualities in a teacher that might be helpful in selecting a teacher for that particular child.
Okay, thank you. And like I said, it may just be a good time for a refresher, because with so many elementary schools,
Right.
It's undoubtedly that we have very different implementations of the policy.
Right.
So,
Right, and that's a great suggestion. Thank you very much. And I'll do the policy number 4335 on criminal behavior. In the past, it had required us, if we had a reasonable suspicion that a child had committed a crime, we were required to report it to the police. In this revision now, it only requires us to report that knowledge to the police if we have it in writing, or we have it in an arrest report, or we have some other concrete way to say that this child has committed a crime. My guess is, and Mark, you can help with this, but my guess is they had a difficult legal time defining reasonable knowledge and what that actually meant. Schools in the community, policy 5000. This is a requirement for school systems to publish all performance information as
Can we
required
just
by
go,
DPI.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Mark, can you comment on that? Because I have a thought on that I'm wondering that it may not be correct.
Dr. Sain's exactly right. I think there were concerns about how, and people spent a lot of time worrying about, well, if someone's told me that this incident has occurred, but I don't have any direct knowledge of it, no written report, is that something I report to the police? How do I report it? Do I report it as occurred, or I think it may occur? And so what the School Board Association has recommended is removing that provision. If you have personal knowledge, if you witness an event
Right.
or have direct knowledge of it, then the report's appropriate, or if you get the written notification. But this kind of rumor, heard about it, heard from somebody else that they saw the act occurring, there was really too much time worrying about, and principals were worried about not complying with the policy, so I think some were reporting everything, even if it was just a rumor that something had gone on. Others were taking a more narrow view, and the recommended policy changes to take that piece out. And I think that actually tracks a change that they've made in the under the state policy.
Right.
Because there were actually some threatened criminal actions against principals for failing to report things, and a lot of issues about what was and was not reasonable knowledge. Now, I will say nothing prevents principal from reporting other stuff if they're confident it's true.
Right.
But by taking the language out of the policy, you create this dilemma for the principal of having to report something that he's not sure really happened, and we're trying to decide, do I have a reasonable belief? I think ultimately, I think we felt an unfair burden on the principal for them to try to make some judgment call about, do I think this happened or didn't happen?
Right, and rumor mills are great ones to start that sort of thing and put principals in a dilemma as to whether or not they should report or not. Policy 5000, again, this requires us to follow the law in publishing our test results, which we do. Policy 5120, our relationship with law enforcement officers. The only change in this one has to do with requiring probation officers to follow our visitors policy. And I don't have any indication from our probation officers that they haven't been doing that, but this came down from the North Carolina School Board Association. The last three policies have been updated to require us to cause E-rate vendors to follow the same rules as any other vendor in providing gifts or lunches or anything like that to folks that they may be meeting with, so that the rules for other vendors apply to E-rate vendors. Any other questions, or any questions on any of these?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I do have a question on this last, or one of these last ones Dr. Sain spoke of, 6401, ethics in the purchasing function. These items would seem to apply to any contract situation. And Mark, because it says purchasing, does that exclude this language from being applied to any contract implication of purchasing, enter into agreements, bids, etc.?
There is a separate ethics policy that's more broad. I mean, I think this policy here is talking about the purchasing function. We also have a code of ethics for school employees that I think is is a broader one. Is that what you're asking? I'm not quite sure I understand
Well,
your question.
I
It could
see-
be the purchase, you mean, it's the purchasing function, could be purchase of goods or services. Is that what you're asking? I think that would apply to both.
Yes, because I think about purchasing, and it says like number 2 there, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, except. So purchasing to me implies more of, honestly, the PO world, the purchase order world. But yet, these types of things apply to, for example, when we often have architectural companies send us invitations for
Right,
big events,
right. Or
you know,
they
and whatnot.
want us to attend a party at a convention or conference, those
Right,
kinds
so-
of invitations.
And some of that would be covered. So, Mark, is that considered purchasing?
Yes, I do think I think purchasing here would include purchase of goods or services anytime you are spending school board money.
Right.
Okay.
The people involved in making those decisions would need to follow these requirements. You couldn't accept a gift or favor of reward, whether it's a services contract or a mowing contract or an architectural contract or legal services contract. I think it would apply to those as well as what you might immediately think of supplies and computer equipment and other stuff. I think purchasing is broader than just either, goods and services or, a construction contract.
Okay, I just want to make sure it applied, because I like the specific language there.
Okay, board members, do we have any other questions on these policies that are presented to us on the first reading? All right, where are we at on this for the action or for the consent agenda, other than, I think we had 4155, you wanted maybe look into that a little bit more, is that correct? Ms. Furtenbaugh? 4155, is that the one that?
No, that's not policy language, that's more just a reminder.
Oh, I see, okay.
That principles are
Yeah.
consistent.
All right, good show. All right, so board members, are we good for the consent agenda on the 19th? Okay. Dr. Singh, we'll move on to the policies on second reading.
There were 2 policies on second read.
One would think I would have figured that out by now. There are 2 policies on second read. The first one is school assignment, and this is a system revision. And I'm going to pull that up because I was asked to make a few changes to make that first sentence clearer. And what we decided that the superintendent or designee will make a recommendation to the board that defines the school assignment areas for students in the system. And I want to make sure that that particular language is clear to you, or clearer than it was. This basically gives the authority to the superintendent to bring forth a plan and the school board to make a determination on the student assignment plans that come in. Any questions on that? Okay. And then the second one has to do with school volunteers, and that's the one in which we were requesting that school volunteers who had unsupervised or some contact with students had background checks. Any questions on those?
Okay, board members, are we good to go on the policies with the second reading for the consent agenda for the 19th? Okay, Dr. Singh, we're good to go on the second reading. All right, thank you. All right, board members, we're going to continue right on with our agenda here, 7.5. We've got Mr. Burnett back to the podium, and he's got a QSCB project request for us, and so we'll listen to what he has to say on this.
Update for bids for construction for Northwest Cabarrus High School. That project is out for bid right now. We had our pre-bid meeting today. The bid is actually November 15th. So at the next school board meeting, November 19th, we will be bringing those bids to you, and with a recommendation for an award to the low bid. And that's the update for that item.
Okay, board members, do you have any questions on this? Now, I guess I'm maybe like some of the other board members, I'm a little bit unclear, why this is on the, for consent or an action. I'm not sure in my own mind. Maybe I'm just missing something, or my mind must be fried or something, but what are we looking for here? Yeah, I realize that, but this
We
is
will
on.
have the bids on the action
Okay, all right.
agenda. That's
So
fine.
so we won't, yeah, okay, so it will have to go on to the action agenda then for the 19th then.
Correct.
So we can act on the bids.
Yes.
I wasn't 100% clear, but it's been a long day, so I wanted to make sure I was on the same page with you. Okay, so with that being said, we'll move right on then, because I'm sure it's an action item, to 7.6, and you're there again to talk to us about the architect selection for the new elementary school.
Sure. And I'll first start with an update. We have advertised, well, first, let me back up and say, as you all know, and as the public has undoubtedly heard tonight, as far as the funding, as of yet, we don't have the funding yet for design services for the new elementary school, but we are working on that. We're having meetings with the county, trying to secure that funding. We have submitted or advertised services for a new elementary school design, RFQ. The architectural firms had until October 29th to respond. We gave them guidelines to tailor their submissions to. That has occurred. We've received those. We received 15 design firms express interest. We think that's a very good pool of firms, and that I think it speaks well. So that's where we are now. What we really need to do is just make sure the following steps, where we need to go in the future, in the next couple steps. So we have been following policy 9110. It's the selection and use of architects. And that was approved in May of 2010 as kind of a fortunately, we had the QSCB RFQ that followed a couple months after that, and that process started in October of 2010. In that, there was an RFQ. Our current RFQ follows that same process, same format, and in that process, a few people, committee, did review these submissions, provided a list to the Board of Education for their review, a pared-down list. And from that, I think the Board of Education had interviews for that list, and then ultimately selected firms from that. So to make sure we're all on the same page, that is how we're planning to proceed for this process. If there's anything that is out of kilter, we certainly want to know about it.
You just said a lot that explained a lot of my questions there, because see, that 2010 was the year that I was not on the board. And when y'all, because this is different than what we have done in years past, and I see where it was changed in May 2010, and also, where you did this in October 2010. So, because the way we had done it before in times past, and Ms. Furtenbach and I talked about this today, and that was, we would do 4 or 5 interviews one night and 4 or 5 the next night and do all that. And so now that the way you're doing it is that you're just going through them and you're paring them down, bringing us a condensed list for us to select from. So obviously this is an action item for the 19th, but I would like to give the board opportunity to ask you questions about whatever they feel like they need to that's relevant to the architect selection. So board members, we'll start on Mr. First side if you have questions or comments. Okay, no comments. Ms. Furtenbach.
Mr. Chair, I have questions on this. This is different than the QSB projects because those were renovations, those were small projects. This is potentially the new elementary clone. This is a much bigger, more serious decision. The responsibility, Mark, I believe, is for the board to select the architects, correct?
Yes. I think that is the board would ultimately enter into the contract with an architect, and it's
Right.
your selection decision. So I agree. I think and I think that's what policy 9110 calls for. It says that the superintendent will solicit proposals for the board, but the board will select the architect.
Right.
So that's true under statute and policy. This is your decision.
And I will just share for board members who were not on the board back in, this would have been January of 2007. Mr. Masters was still here. Holly, Carolyn, and I were the kind of the paring down committee, if you will. And you'll remember my daughter had outpatient surgery, and so we met in my living room because I couldn't leave her. It was kind of unexpected situation. So the four of us met in my living room. We had architect proposals all over the place. Remember that? And we literally, for hours, we had created a bit of a rubric. And for hours, we went through and graded and criteria. And we brought our summary grades to the full board and said, this is why we believe the top, we include these or exclude those. And we drew a line after, I'm not sure, it was 5 or 6, and said the scores were very different. And we didn't pre-plan the 5 or 6, but the scores became very different. And so we drew the line there and said, we'll interview the ones who are above this line. And so we did. And Mr. Chair, that's how we narrowed it down at that time. I believe this is a much more major decision than a QSCB process, because this is not only this school but future schools. And so in that rubric, we had everything from, if you will, the ability, we needed some fast design, and we had a very definite timetable on how quickly we needed to get things open. And we had everything from ability to understand our requirements, previous experience with us. In some cases, we let someone, if you will, it made it into the top 10 because they had done a lot of schools at that level. Other ones made it into that top 5 or whatever it was because they had other qualifications that were very important to us, such as on time, on budget, proximity to Cabarrus County or in Cabarrus County. There were a lot of elements that we included, and I honestly don't know if I have that rubric anymore, but I could probably search my laptop and find it. And I don't know if we made it up, or I'm not sure. Do you ladies remember? I don't remember where we came up with it, or if Sam made it for us. But we had a very definite grading process, and we had board members. The 3 of us were able to convey to the rest of the board why we recommended this top of the list. And yes, staff has expertise, but ultimately this board owns that decision, and whoever sits in these seats in another month. So like I said, Mr. Chair, I would really like to go back, and if we can make it happen quickly, to pare it down. If you guys have already started paring it down, but have several of us involved who have looked at these things before. And even if we don't get to the point where this board can hire, at least this board can provide the experience and expertise that we have gained over the years to the new board. So,
thank you, Ms. Furtenbaugh. Some very good comments. I know Ms. Blackwater has some comments because her and I talked about this briefly, and so I know you have some questions and concerns. Go ahead.
I do. My real concern, Dave, is I'm not sure why we're doing this now. I hear Cindy, but the one thing that she said really kind of validated what I was going to say. At that point in time, we were in a crunch to get things done in a hurry. I'm not sure why we're doing this tonight or this month at all. We don't even have the source of revenue identified. The county commissioners have not committed to that. They've not even committed to the land. I'm not sure how we decide an architect when we don't have any of the specifics that we would normally have in place. I'm not sure why we would even begin to do that. We don't have time to do it as this board here, so you are going to have 4 more to come on that'll be new. This doesn't make sense that we're having this discussion tonight. If we had the monies dedicated from the commissioners, that would be one thing, but we do not and probably will not. So I'm not sure why we're even having this discussion.
Ms. Blackwood, I think I'll just say from prior meetings, I know you had to miss a few there, but we had talked about, decisions to not lose the experience, because when you accumulate, to not lose the experience, at least to provide the insight, whether it be maybe not even to the final vote, but to the paring down process, and here's why. Here are the things that are important. Because it is a very different world, and let me tell you, back at the beginning, when I first came on the board, we were still building J.M. Robinson High School, and now the Robinson parents think they have the oldest building in the, in the area. But so either I'm really old and I've been on the board way too many years, or it's not that old, I'm not sure. But, when I think back of the things I didn't know, and I had to go to people like Grace to explain to me about why something was important or not for that school, until the level of comfortability now. So I think that was part of the goal, is to get this far enough along. Obviously, we can't enter into a contract, but get this far enough along now with the experience. So.
I think some of my points being missed, though. My thought is, if we're not going to have another school for at least 3 to 5 years, why would we begin to draw up specs on a new elementary school when buildings code are definitely going to change? There's going to be a lot of things that are going to change during that time frame. How would we tie up a new elementary school plan if we're not sure what that's even going to look like in that length of time?
Yeah, because we're actually in year 3, as Mr. Kiger said earlier. We're in between years 3 and 4 of that 5-year, hiatus. So we're already well along. So that we don't get into another crunch, basically, like we have before, and pay more money for it.
Thank you, ladies, for your comments. I think Ms. Blackwelder also, she may have forgot this particular question, and I want to bring it to her memory and also put it to you as well. And that is, if we decide to do this early, this far out, from whenever the school is going to be built, what would happen in the unlikely event that the particular architect that's selected is out of business in 3 years?
The architect owns the plan. That was the point of that. When I talked to Chairman Hsu today, I said, this is not like we've got a site ready to go, construction underway like we normally have in the past. That plan's going to sit there, and I'm sure that is a very, out there scenario. But if it did, that architect owns that plan. Would the new board have to start all over again? I don't see the issue of starting a contract with somebody when we don't have the money to even enter into that contract. Where's that money going to come from?
Those points are well taken. As far as the money, of course, it is coming from the county, should it come. As far as the ownership of the contract, the ownership of the design, there is some language in our contract, which, of course, we haven't signed a contract yet, and the contract can still be modified. But there was an attempt to try to have some protections for the board, to be able to own the prototype. And typically that the best you can probably hope for is a dual ownership, but it's very difficult as far as ownership of a set of plans. The architect has invested a great deal of time, effort, money, creativity for it, so they certainly do want to retain those rights. But we did make some attempts to try to protect the board because we knew it was going to be a prototype. And we knew that, given the expectation that growth is going to continue and take off, certainly at a higher rate than it's been in the last couple of years, that the prototype would be continued and repeated several times, and that not necessarily with the same firm. So there was an effort, to safeguard against, the one firm owning exclusive rights to the plans. But again, that's walking a fine line. As far as will the firm be in business in 3 years, you can't say. Certainly one expects that the economy has hit bottom and is coming back, and certainly the firms that are still in business are the survivors, and that speaks well for them. But I can't guarantee anything in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett, for your answers there. Mr. Kiger, you have your comments, questions?
I do. I guess I want to address two separate things that we were talking about. One is the process, and I guess what I want to make sure that Ms. Furtball understands is from what I gathered and what you guys were putting together, they in no way, shape, or form were trying to take away from this board its responsibility to pick an architect. I think as I understood it, and one point to keep in mind, some of this we started and put in motion prior to our latest chair-vice chair meeting, where that's really where the weather got cloudy. So let's back up for just a second. these guys solicited the proposals. They asked me to sit in on when they were going to receive them, which I was happy to do, and was ready to go. And that meeting was to be Friday, in the hopes that we would just pare down and then give to the board. I don't even know if we didn't get far enough to talk about it, but I don't know if we would have had a set number. I assume it would have been 4 or 5, maybe 6 out of the 15. But as far as that process goes, this is different than the QSCB. But I'm totally comfortable with an architect who heads our department and his able-bodied assistant. Sorry if that makes you sound like Batman and Robin, but Dave obviously is very qualified and built a lot of schools. I was very comfortable with you guys taking the brunt of fishing through the big picture and paring it down for us. If that's not what this board has done before, as we sat Friday and looked at the policy, and it clearly states that the board will pick the architect, well, the pairing, to me, it was two different things. So, but if this board wants to be the ones to pare it down, then I guess that's what we'll do. But I just didn't see that in any way, shape, or form of trying to get around something to get to the end. I applaud you for wanting to take the initiative to pare it down. As far as after our meeting on Wednesday, we set that up prior to meeting with our chair and vice chair meeting. Everything to me got very cloudy on Wednesday, where we're now not guaranteed of our capital request for land, which we put at the top and have been at the top. I'm not sure we're not guaranteed of getting that, and we certainly were told that even if we get that, the funding for the new school is clearly not in place and may not be in the near future. Now that's for the commissioners to decide, and that's their. That's on them, but the reality for us is, I think Ms. Blackwelder has kind of swerved into it. I'm not sure we should spend a lot of time or our wheels dealing with something that now looks a lot further out than it did a week ago, at least in my eyes. So, how it would have been nice to use the background and experience of this current board that you guys, you can't go in a new school that you don't see a plaque on the wall with Furtenbaugh and Blackwelder and Carpenter. I mean, you guys built schools like, it's just incredible how many new schools you had to do. So that experience would be well worth drawing on. But the reality of where we are in the timeline, I'm just not sure it works now. And that's our loss, that we don't get to use that background. But for the time and where we are, I'm just not sure it makes any sense to spend much more time on it.
Well said, Mr. Kiger. Ms. Carpenter?
I'm going to be here 2 more years. Can't get rid of me but one of the things, I did like the process we used. And Cindy, I do remember having everything spread all over your living room, and that process did go well. And what I did like about it was you had 3 of the board members that were making that decision. And we were looking at that. And I did like that process because we got to look through there, and that rubric was wonderful. I like that because we did look at a lot of different things, and we got to go through those. And I like the idea that y'all have looked through them also to start with. Again, I cannot stress, I've said it one time in the meeting, I'm well known for repeating myself, but cannot stress to the commissioners how important we need this now. We're looking at these numbers, and I know that they've gotten these numbers that we've seen. We're looking at schools right now that are before the first 2 items on our agenda tonight, we were looking at schools that were at 129%, 115%. And if you go to our middle schools, I'm not telling anything this board does not know. But if we don't do something, what we did the first part of the meeting is maybe putting us, giving us a year to a year and a half, 2 years at the most. We've got to do something. I'm not telling anybody in this room anything that we don't know. I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been on commissioner side, I've been on the school board side. So I know how important it is. But it's important for the public to know and for us all to know, and it's affecting our children. So we've got to do that. But I think that the process where the board does look at it is very important. So I think we need to look at that process. And we can't be slow about it.
That's right. Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Ms. Minot?
I have a couple of comments. Number one, I don't see how this could possibly be accomplished by December, and you're going to have new people on in December anyway. So, and then also in the consideration of new members, I don't necessarily want to think that that new board's not going to be qualified to do this. They're not, from what I know of these individuals, they are all, any of them are going to be good board members. It's well off in the future. I don't see the rush to do this. And the other part is, I know in the past we have cloned schools, and that was at least thought to be a cost-saving measure. And I wonder if that's even being considered, that we take one of the plans we've already done and clone it, and and compare that to the cost of a entirely new project. So that's my two things. I think it's premature, and I have a question about the cost.
And I can reply as far as the clone. Typically, there is some savings on the design side. Just remember that the design side, when you save, you save a little bit of money as opposed to the entire project cost. So just keep that in perspective. Now, you have clone projects, and the last elementary school was done repeatedly, numerous times. And really, codes change, opinions change, other driving forces. So really, the design of the past, I think the administration's point is that this school is going to be for 50 to 100 years. We really do need the next school. As you look at the energy code, that has changed significantly since your last design. And really some of that can really create or cause you to completely throw out what you had and come back with a new look. So for a variety of reasons, it's probably time to come out with a new look. Again, you're addressing new codes, new requirements, new goals. It's been several years since the original, since the last original prototype, and there's new requirements.
Okay, those were all good points, and I'm glad you pointed them out. There was one other issue as well, as not wanting to rush into it and try to do something in a hurry situation just because of the board change. We don't have the land, and I do not understand how you can plan a design without knowing what the land's going to be. I mean, that to me is just almost an impossible situation, or you'll wind up having expenses of making the land fit the design where the design should fit the land.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry if I may. To the other board members, one of the things we've often said is we've had difficulty with
Ms.
land.
Furtenbaugh, can you hold your comments
Okay.
just for 1 minute? Because
Sure.
the cameraman, they've been needing to change the tapes back there, so let's let them do
Okay.
that, and then we'll pick right back up with you. So you hold your
Okay.
thoughts there.